You have to go find another dragon and slay it. How many times can you do that? How many times can you roll the dice?
It takes.
Yeah. How many dragons you got left, DM?
Hey, Matt. Oh, Byron? What? Hey. Oh. God, I know this smell. It's butcher shop. Hey. Oh, did they forget to? Can you guys? All right. Hey guys, today's note says, attention, read aloud exactly what is written on this note, or be destroyed and replaced. Or maybe not replaced. But welcome to Caffeine and Cantrips, the show where we talk about D&D or else. Yeah, or else. Hello, friends. Sean number 256 here. Today, we're going to be talking about a level of immersion that really helps the world feel alive. One of the best parts about D&D is how you can really experience the effect of your actions and see how you can change the world in a very real way. So buckle up. Byron number 2299 and I are going to be talking about making the world and its environment dynamic and compelling. Like this. This one smells much better.
Yes, I do.
Welcome to Caffeine and Cantrips, everyone. I'm glad you could join me and Alive Byron. It's great. As we introduced, we are going to be talking about making your world dynamic and reacting to, or your campaign world, dynamic and have it react to the actions of your players.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know, it's important to talk about, I think, or at least important to think about when we are DMing and when we're sort of designing our campaigns and we're running our campaigns. Because I think it just adds so much more to the gameplay and the feeling for the players and the DMs. And I think it's really playing to one of the strengths of Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop RPGs when you have a DM and players like that. The unique ability to react to the players. And if we don't do that, we're missing out on sort of a big opportunity that's unique to this format, I think.
Well, and it's one of the biggest things that people are looking for in their real lives and in roleplay is to get out there and affect change in the world around them.
Right.
Right. And this is, or rather, when you have a dynamic environment that does react, does change, and does experience its own kind of story arc in a way, right? It becomes a character. It becomes this tangible thing that really allows the players to interact with, to see evolve, and to see what happens when you push that red button.
Oh, which red button?
Oh, you know the button.
Oh, that one. That goes ding. Right?
Yes. The one that dings, the one that thumbs is up, the one that subscribes with its own sound notifications. And we're noticing more than ever, we're getting more and more people on. So
it's weird.
Welcome to our table. We are glad to have you, and let us hear your voices.
Yeah. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome to our purgatory, where we're first to talk about D&D in a small boxy room for your viewing pleasure. But let's get started.
Yeah.
I want to get started talking about, like, if you haven't considered, say, making your world a little more dynamic. I mean, you may have in the past thought about around your campaigns, like, oh, just quest, reward, quest, reward, quest, reward. So that loop, right?
It's a very linear yo-yo of a story.
Right.
Yep.
Like, you might wonder why, because it sounds like a lot of work to be like, oh, have the world react like in different ways to player actions. and have me having to like revamp my campaign world and the dynamics in there. Like, why even is it worth doing that?
It is, Sean.
It absolutely is.
It is.
So I want to start talking about the value proposition of making your world react and be dynamic to the actions of your players, right? And why it's a good idea to, if you're at that stage in your DMing sort of cycle or your life, to start adding that to your world or to your campaign. Right? Or else.
Child, toddler, infant, life cycles and dynamic environments, puberty. Yeah, exactly. If you're in that stage of your DM life.
Right? Spreading your wings into the butterfly stage. Right?
Cocoon.
Right? Coming out of your cocoon. But no, so one of the things that having sort of this dynamic world that changes according to what's happening with your players and what they do in your world, one big thing that does, it really ups the immersion. Mm-hmm. Right? And by doing that, you're like, oh, it makes sense. It makes me feel like I'm there because when I do something, things change. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not like, oh, I like the NPC when I talk to him, like the gatekeeper says, "Hello, adventurers, welcome to town." Right? Mm-hmm. And then I went and did a quest. I saved his kids, brought them back, and then you come back through the gates again. He's like, "Hello, adventurers, welcome back to town." Mm-hmm. And that's it. Mm-hmm. Right? Like a video game. Right? Mm-hmm. Now he's like, "No, yes, what do you guys need? I'm glad you made it back." He's so all of a sudden more warm and welcoming and so grateful to your party. Right? That's an example of that immersion. It feels real.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And because it's more immersive, it draws your players into your game. Mm-hmm. Right? And it makes it memorable. Mm-hmm. Right? Because whatever, like, do you remember that NPC who was just like, "Hey, adventurers, welcome back to town," and that's all they say? You'll forget that.
You will.
You absolutely
will.
And over
you absolutely
again,
will.
Right? Over the months and the years that you're going to be playing, right? Mm-hmm. But if that's the NPC who was like, "No, come to my house, meet my family," right? Like,
are you new to town?
Let's have dinner.
You gotta have my wife's dinner.
Well, after you saved his kids.
Oh, okay.
Quest,
okay.
Right?
Very nice. Yes.
Right.
Very nice.
That's the reaction.
Yes.
Right. All of a sudden, now it's a person. They've got changing attitudes, right? Mm-hmm. Or some dude stole something. Now the guard's like, "You thief! I'm gonna shoot you like dirt now, right? Mm-hmm. I'm watching you.
I know what type of person you are."
Yeah. And then also by doing that kind of stuff, you up player engagement and agency. I know because that's another one of the big draws to TTRPGs is this feeling of player agency, right? Because if because what is player agency? It's the ability to affect change.
What's in the world? Is it?
Is it?
Or is it the ability to have valid choices?
Well, I mean, no. I think without affecting change, your choices aren't really choices because they don't do anything.
So to be an effective choice, it has to have a weight of change.
Well, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, we're on the same side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we though?
One of us is in the caboose.
That's right. So player engagement, player agency, and without player agency, people just don't. Why even play D&D? I just watch a movie, watch a TV show.
Right.
So that like we talked about, the players' choices matter, and because they matter, they feel more invested in it, and then their dedication to playing the game and their enthusiasm goes up because it's like, oh, I'm important, I matter in this world, right? And that's what everyone wants, right? And if they are more dedicated and more enthusiastic, they'll put more effort and care into their RP. It ups player quality all around, I think. So, I mean, if that's already sort of a great benefit of adding reactions and dynamics to your environment in your campaign. It also adds narrative depth, right? Because now you have stories. You can have things that happen because of something that happened. Because that happened, this happened. And because this happens, the players did this. And because the players did this, this happens. And you have a natural sort of story. Correct. It's the Harmon wheel that we always talk about.
Right.
You have that depth, whereas if it's just quest, reward, some other quests and rewards, some other quests, it gets old fast.
Right.
And they're not connected, and it doesn't really matter. Like,
No, I like it's like as far as a metaphor would go, it's kind of like an echo, right? The echo, you send out the first kind of wave, and then you hear some back, and then you hear yet another kind of iteration of it back, and another iteration back, and another, and that just means that that's spreading out farther and farther. And you're getting these different kind of feedback points back, positive, negative, all of these sorts of things. Yeah. Right? I know in your example of a town guard, in one of my games, I included an NPC guard by the name of Bruce, who was attempting to become Guard of the Year. And so he was trying to be extra helpful. He was
what it was?
He was a less than capable but very friendly guard who was trying to do his best.
Yeah.
And was always trying to go above and beyond.
Funny, I didn't know that.
Right. And one of the PCs actually went so far as to fill out one of the little surveys to recommend him for Guard of the Month or Guard of the Year or whatever.
So funny.
Right. And they never went back to check on it. So that to me is great and awesome, because that's put out into the environment around the PCs, something that I can play with that creates a nice little callback, like that echo coming back to you to remind you, oh yeah, oh really thanks for filling that out. I'm the Guard of the Year now, right? And then you get to have this fun little guy that maybe they look forward to seeing, maybe they don't, maybe they just forgot all about him, because that happens too. But there is more depth, there is more immersion, there is more reality in the world,
and it's a great creative sort of outlet too, because D&D really is a communal, creative sort of activity, right? Where you everyone comes together, DMs, players, right? Come together as a sort of cooperative, creative activity where you build something together, right? And by having the world be reactive to what the players do, because typically we think of DMs are the ones who create the world, and the players are the ones that just have to get to play in it. Yes. Jaunt through it and wreck things or whatever, right?
I agree with that statement.
But by having the world react to what the players do and change, the players themselves now have a chance to build the campaign as well. It's a little in for them, a little entrance, sort of access to enact their change in the world, right? And if they see that, from just naturally by our questing and stuff like that, there's change in the world, they're able then to sort of in their mind be like, well, I can affect change on my terms too.
Yes.
Like, I want to start a business, right? Or maybe I want to get to know these people or get in with the church, right? Just because I want to affect change in that way. Or I want to build something cool for the town or whatever. Like, let's start a festival, whatever. I'm building the campaign that I'm playing in.
Right.
And I think as a DM, it's really nice.
It really is, right? Yeah. Like, yes, I still think that your base statement of the DM creates the world, right?
Right.
And so if we think of that like a sandbox, a familiar term to us, but then all the friends in the neighborhood come over and they bring their own toys to play in it.
Right.
And the sandbox will never be that same sandbox again, right? Because every person brings their own unique kind of twist to what's going on.
Yeah.
And so even if you were to run the exact same campaign over and over and over, but with a different person each time or a different collection of people, they are going to be wildly different. Right? Wildly different, just because of what is happening, what the spotlight is following, what things interest individual people, what they're trying this time, what they're trying the next time, right? No, absolutely.
But without that reaction, then they can't really affect much change in that sandbox, and it's always just going to be static sandbox, right? So, and the last sort of thing, I think, the big benefit is that it adds sort of a narrative flexibility to it, to your story. Like to be able to respond to the player's actions in real time, and being able to have the world react to them. The players are then free to do what they want. Right? They can affect the narrative.
Right.
Instead of just like go on a quest, you finish it or not, you get the loot or you don't get the loot.
Yeah.
Right? Now I can finish it in this way or that way, or not do the quest because I don't want, because I think that's the wrong thing to do or whatever, right? And have the world react to that. But the story itself is much more flexible now. And it's much more interesting in that way. Whereas if it's not, then it's much more rigid.
Yes. And I think bringing it back into our own nomenclature of it, what this is the PCs engaging in developing their own water slide.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And the DM is then able to look at some of the pieces or some of the things that they are developing and then further evolve, develop, and create more interesting exits, turns, twists, loop-de-loops based on those things.
Yeah.
And so it becomes almost like a communal bag of parts that you're pulling out, and the DM gets to put on some extra stuff, right?
Well, you're playing together now.
Yes.
Like, as opposed to...
on many levels.
Like me building the toys and let you guys play.
Correct.
And my pleasure comes from seeing how much fun you guys are having with the toys that I built.
That I built, yes.
Right now that I can play with your toys, you can play with my toys, and it's just the big smorgasbord of mutual toy playing.
Smorgasbord.
Yeah. Want to play with my toys?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling full of life and energy, so why not? Why not? No, it's really kind of interesting, and I like the idea of Lego style or build your own adventure type thing of where everybody's bringing different unique pieces, and then we see what we can assemble together as a conglomerate or as a team of people. But I mean, I suppose a little less conceptually.
Yep. I always go too conceptual, sorry guys.
Well, no. And maybe you're just feeling philosophical today.
I always am.
Well, that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
But to bring it down to the cold, hard earth from those hot stars.
Always got to bring me down, Byron.
Yeah. Keeping you grounded. I think practically there is certain things that will have the largest impact on your campaign when you are a DM. And then you did initially say, like, if you don't think about these things, what type of things should I think about?
Okay.
If I am entering the next phase of my DM life and I'm wanting to increase the breadth of my toolkit, right? What should I start to conceptualize therein, right? So maybe I'll be a little bit more practical.
No, it's good. I just wanted to put out reasons to convince you guys that this is something that you should really be serious about sort of adding to your campaign if you haven't already.
I don't think you guys need convincing. I think everybody wants to be better.
Do they, though?
Do you?
Do you?
Like.
Subscribe. Be better.
Be better. Or else. So when we're talking about these things, that one was shameless. When we're talking about these things, one of the easiest things to do conceptually when we're starting to talk about this, and I guess conceptually but grounded, is money.
More money.
More money, more problems for everyone else and you. So what happens when, your PCs or, your party, depending on which side of the screen you're on, you have just successfully finished this part of the campaign. I'm going to say a part of the campaign, not the whole campaign, because if you finish the whole campaign, you've defeated the BBEG like last episode. You went through that amazing epic encounter. Then you're going into epilogue territory, right? And that doesn't give you a chance to really experience what it's like to see the world evolving.
Well, it doesn't let you experience the consequences.
Yeah, unless you're going to continue to play those characters, which, I mean, bravo, good for you. They're super awesome characters. Keep playing them. But if we're talking about a mid-tier, quote-unquote, boss, or maybe a windfall, someone's estranged uncle has passed away in a far land, and you need to go collect the deed to their mansion and all of their riches. What happens when a group of really, generally speaking, nomadic adventurers comes into a boatload of cash? And then they go hit the local kind of watering hole, and they're just like, we're dropping stacks, literal stacks of gold on the counter. And the local economy, what does that do? Right. What does that do? How do they use their money? How does that affect? If it's now conceptually, once again, when we're thinking about this, the bigger the town, the smaller the impact. Right? You need a bigger splash to make a tiny wave in a big city versus in a small frontier-esque kind of spot.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, you come in, you're like, oh, we want to buy 1,000 gold worth of horse feed. because we want to open our own stables and open our own business.
Yep.
We can't provide that.
Yeah.
That's so much. We can't do that. Like
we have 5 horses in the town.
Yeah, no, there's no way that we need that much. I know you want to put an X on the spot. Maybe you should run for mayor, and then maybe you should fund all this stuff yourself. Oh, okay. There you go, DM. Now you're starting to consider what that impact is and what it looks like. Can the local area, can the environment, in this case, the financial infrastructure, can it handle that amount of kind of point load, right? And what do the PCs do with that? They want to like celebrate.
Yeah.
They want to throw a big party, invite all their friends, right? All their still living relatives, gather them all up into one nice spot. Drone strike. That's a BBG I want to play. Anyway, all of these things, what does that look like to the area? And like I said, if they're in a big city, maybe they were nobodies and now everybody knows their name. Everybody wants to be their friend.
Right.
But really, they can't bully their way around by throwing coin at other nobles because other nobles are established. They've got quote unquote old money, right? They know what it's like. They're established. They've got assets. They've got houses. They've got warehouses. They've got all of these things. You're just new money. You don't actually have any infrastructure. You don't create money. Once your money's gone, it's gone. You have to go find another dragon and slay it. How many times can you do that? How many times can you roll the dice?
It takes.
Yeah. How many dragons you got left, DM? Right? Like these types of things need to be considered, right? And when we're just talking about money, that's cool. But what else kind of comes with that? When we're talking hordes of cash, right? We're talking magical items, right? We're talking art pieces, statues. It then becomes like a logistical nightmare for the party. If you're playing to that level, perhaps, right? To go and say, well, what do we do? How can we fence this? We've got a life-size statue of, the king.
Lord Farquaad.
Well, that one would be easier to handle. Probably the barbarian and the fighter can muscle it out. But what happens if we've got a life-size golden statue of the king that the dragon stole?
The Colossus of Rhodes.
Wow. That's a big dragon. How do we deal with that? Do we just melt it down and then bring back the gold?
Right.
Or is it worth more to the king? So then do we get them to come out? Like what happens? And when we're talking about environmental impact kind of going beyond this, bandits have now heard that this town is flush with cash and short on guards. So now the PCs have gone there. They've moved on to the next arc. But then they hear, all of their friends back in Podunk are now suffering because they heard that there was a bunch of money.
Right.
And they heard that there was a bunch of friends of some crazy adventurers that did some crazy stuff. And now they're preying on the weak people that are exposed and left behind. Right. And not to say that you should always create a negative consequence, but it's a natural thing for greedy bandits to want to go where the pickings are fat and the swords are blunt.
Right.
And so these types of things can happen. Right. All of a sudden, other adventurers, other bounty hunters here, there's a plethora of magic items that just got dumped on this small town and they don't know what to do with them. Sounds like it's time for a heist.
Right. And well, and depending on what kind of magic items, other countries might be like, oh, this kingdom got that. We can't let that happen. And then political stuff starts getting triggered.
Correct.
Because some magic items are very powerful, depending on your level of magic in your world.
Well, and this is another thing, right? So what happens if it's, for instance, a +2 magical weapon in a world where magical weapons aren't known, aren't found, aren't whatever, right? That blade is of such exceptional quality. It is legendary.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that this is 4th tier play and, your fighter's like, I got 3 of these. Like, I don't care about them anymore. What do we do with that? Right. So I think that when we start looking at the impact of when our PCs return victorious, celebrity and celebratory in what they're doing, that we have a conception of how to deal with their wealth. Now, whether that's an organization or patron that's backing them, hey guys, your amount of money in my organization would be wonderful and I can spread it out.
Right.
So here's a writ. I will trade you, your 10 horse loads of gold for this little piece of paper.
Right.
Right. And that way you'll be able to access it no matter where you go in our organization. All around the world, you'll be able to access your wealth without having to carry it with you. Don't worry, we'll figure out how to get that statue out of there. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We'll do that, right? That way, the PCs have a way to rely on somebody else to help them, but it's still an ally to them. They can still trust that their wealth is handled. And you, as the DM, don't necessarily have to worry about destabilizing an entire region because a bunch of people just got rich. They struck gold, right? And create a gold rush there. So gold is, I think, gold, magical items, art pieces, gemstones, right? These sorts of things, I think is the first practical thing that I think it's the easiest to come up with as far as what it's going to do to the area that you've built, to that sandbox around the town or that environment around there.
Interesting.
As a concept.
Because it can even extend to other things too. Like we went and we defeated the bandits who had been holed up in the mines. Now the mine's free. Now that people can go and mine again in that town.
That creates a new source of whatever material it is, right?
And then, like, what does that do to the town? The prosperity of the town? Who goes there?
Depending on your campaign, right? That could be a gold mine. That could be a silver mine, right? So it's minting out ores for making coins. That could be an iron mine. That could be an adamantium vein. That could be whatever. Those are tools for war, right? So depending on what it is, creates different influences in what's around it in the world. So goods. This is my first physical concept that I would like you to think about is how does an extreme influx of goods affect the area?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like it's a lot to think about.
It can be. And this is why I think money and stuff is the easiest to comprehend because it's I know it's still fantasy, but it's like a tangible thing that we're used to understanding.
Right. No, I guess so. It is sort of a simple way of sort of jumping into that mental exercise of the downstream effects of whatever the influx of cash is. I mean, economics is complex, but you don't have to bring, like, if you don't want to bring like inflation and deflation and like housing prices and like all that kind of stuff, right? Like the power of leveraging and shit like that in your campaign. That's fine.
Yeah.
But even just supply and demand, simple.
Correct.
Right.
Can we handle it? Can we not handle it? Right.
Right. Oh, where's it going to go?
Somebody just came through and they bought every business in town.
Right.
That's what this is now their town.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how the PCs didn't spread their money out buying a whole bunch of goods. They bought assets that will generate a small amount of money over time so that they created I know we're talking about economics, but this is a way for them to hide their money instead of just walking around with literally extra horses to carry the weight of the coins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
In that sort of really concrete, more simplistic terms of stuff. But I think you have to be, if you want to sort of to expand it up to a higher level again.
Yeah, we're going to roller coaster this baby.
Yeah. Let's talk about some key points I think that are important to think about when you're trying to figure out what the consequences should be, what the dynamic should be.
Well, we're all thinking.
What the changes,
so
right?
Tell us what to think about.
I think, are we thinking? Or are we just reading off a script? No, I think you should think about consistency and realism. So try to make sure that whatever change you're going to make is consistent with the rules that you've set in your world. And it is real within, so it makes sense within those rules in your campaign already. For example, like one rule is the magic is everywhere. So you dumped a bunch of minor magic items, no one's going to care.
Yes.
Right. But if that's staying consistent, right? But all of a sudden they're like, oh, what? You have, I don't know, you have cloaks of billowing? That's so awesome. Even though everyone has cloaks of billowing.
Right.
Like, well, this makes sense. And then
maybe everybody in the big city does,
right.
But in the smaller towns, they don't. That's the fashionable item of the season, right?
So but again, consistency and realism.
Yes.
Right? The nobles are going to be like, oh, I'll give you my house for that thing, even though I already have 10 of them. Then the players like, what sort of breaks the immersion, the things that you wanted to sort of have more of in the first place. Right? So things should be logical. Things should be reasonable, like the impacts on the world.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that in mind when you're designing that, because you don't want to break the believability.
Right. And that's why big town, small splash.
Yeah.
Small town, big splash, right?
And I think an interesting thing about when you're deciding what the impact should be
mm-hmm.
is that you should remember that the consequences or the reaction of the world affects the actions of the players.
Hopefully.
They will. Well, one way or another, they will.
You present the choice for them to interact, whether they do or don't.
Right, because players will, they'll learn to do what benefits them,
mm-hmm.
and they will learn to avoid what doesn't benefit them. Right? So depending on what the reaction is from the world, the consequences of their actions are, right? So if you reward them for doing something bad, they'll naturally, in their minds, this is how humans work. They'll be like, oh, if I do bad things or things like this sort of badness,
mm-hmm.
it'll benefit me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if the consequences are more negative, then I'll avoid that kind of sort of behavior.
Correct.
Right? So in some ways, we are training our players
mm-hmm.
on what sort of things are appropriate to do and what things are not appropriate to do. And we do that through what kind of consequences we give them.
Yes.
Right? Positive or negative or mixed.
Mm-hmm.
Mixed, so it's a little bit of positive, a little bit more positive than negative, or a little bit more negative, or is it, right?
And this is important to do while they're young.
Yeah.
So young in the campaign, young in life, whatever it is.
Early on in the campaign.
Early on, because it's harder to control, in this case, for my metaphor, I'm going to use a circus,
mm-hmm.
but it's harder to control a rampaging elephant than it is to control the baby version, right? And so one of the things that, I don't know if they still do, but when they're babies, they use a big rope to tie them, and they put a peg in the ground, and the babies can't break the rope.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They can't break. And so they learn that rope means that they can't go anywhere.
Right.
And so when they're older, it doesn't require a thick, heavy chain to hold the elephant there. They've learned the lesson that this rope, even if it's just a line around
mm-hmm.
their foot, it reminds them that, nope, they're supposed to stay here.
Right.
So they don't. And that's the same as a level 1 adventuring party versus
mm-hmm.
a level 20 adventuring party. Right? The city guard does not stand a chance against the level 20s.
Yeah.
They just don't. It's going to take armies. And we know, at least in 5th edition, that at a 20th level, your PCs are approaching like divinity levels of power and abilities and crazy shit that they're going to pull out of, all of their
orifices.
Ba-bow, bow, bow. So
it's a Seinfeld joke all of a sudden.
What is up with these PCs in the guard?
So many orifices everywhere.
But yes, so when you're thinking about your campaign, if you want these to actually be good characters, teach them lessons, supply them
mm-hmm.
benefits and treats for being good characters.
Yes.
Right? If you want to meander down the path of Naughtyville, then
mm-hmm.
let them go down there, but remind them of the consequences.
Right. Or if it's an evil campaign, that's what direction you go. Then, right?
Yep.
You get to manipulate them. It's kind of feels kind of bad to say.
No, I think it's explaining how the world works. Right.
Yep.
And you can't explain how the world works when the thing that you're trying to train is more powerful than you and it doesn't want to do what you want it to do.
I mean, because in the end, the players can still choose to do the wrong thing.
They absolutely can, but then
if they think it's worth it.
But they'll feel bad. And maybe that's all it takes.
Well, they'll understand the cost.
Yes.
Right? At least.
Yeah.
Right? And they can decide for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's a big one, actually. When thinking about what the appropriate consequence should be, what's the appropriate way the world should change to do that. So if you don't want murder hobos, make sure to put those negative consequences early.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My next point for this is try to. I mean, it's good to be consistent. It's good to be real
mm-hmm.
in your consequences, but don't be afraid to be creative and flexible as well. Because what?
No, be like the mighty oak.
Right? Because like don't be afraid to be unique. Don't be afraid to be imaginative.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? In in sort of what happens, because I don't know. Not only is it kind of boring sometimes if it's always the same thing, or if it's the expected outcome is always the same. Make sure it's still believable. Make sure it's still reasonable. Make it unique. It's made somewhere else, right? Be flexible, because sometimes you think the player you've got a consequence, sort of already sort of planned out. You're like, oh yeah, the player's gonna go and kill the bandits. The mine's gonna be free. Then the blacksmith can get the ore, and then they can make the swords that the players want. But the players are like, no, I'm gonna join the bandits. Right? It sort of derails everything. So you need to be flexible, and I think it's a learned skill. But be flexible and roll with that, and then be like, oh, what's the appropriate changes? It's okay that it's not what you were planning, right? Be able to sort of switch gears.
Right.
And work with what the players are doing.
Right.
And I think if you keep these sort of concepts in mind as you're like, oh, what should happen because of this? You're off to a good start.
Yes.
Right? To be able to get the value that you're sort of wanting out of the campaign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think if you're really going to experience something like that, the players have probably been alluding to it, or there's been conversations about that kind of thing. So it should be within your scope or realm of possibilities.
On your table. Sometimes they're like,
well, there's buckle talk. Yes, you.
And you.
You know who you are.
And me. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
It's fun if you're on the inside of the circle. When we're looking at I really lost what I was going to talk about. So while I think about that.
Yeah.
Why don't you just like how Sean derailed my train? That was pretty awesome.
All the time, right?
All the time,
subscribe to my sabotage of his multi-vehicle, contraptions.
Yes.
Trains of thought.
And while I just bought the ticket and got on.
And subscribe.
The bell ring.
Yeah.
And I knew to get back on the train. So if your PCs are talking about these types of things, as a DM, we can expect hard rights, hard left turns, right? But not 180s. 180s are very rare.
Just kidding.
Right? They don't normally happen because there wants to be some sort of progression in everything that your players are doing. And very rarely, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but very rarely is going forward, going backwards.
Well, because hopefully you guys have done a good session 0 and you talk about what you want and what the proper flow that you're all expecting from the campaign. So that you're on board together, at least in that base sense. So that's why I think that those U-turns are like.
There's hints.
Yeah.
You're all rogues and rangers? All of you? There's 6 of you. All rogues and rangers. Okay. Scouts? Oh. I'm watching you. Yeah, no, I definitely think. Definitely think that is something that you have to deal with in general. And you allow your PCs to align with the organizations that they want to align with.
I mean, because usually it's not like a U-turn. It's that they had some creative solution to the thing that you thought they were going to do. And that has far-ranging consequences that now you have to consider.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Maybe that wasn't the best.
Right on.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. It was a poor salute, by the way. Yeah. No. I agree. I agree that there's no. I will teach him the proper etiquette of saluting.
I don't know.
After we're gonna get destroyed for that one. There's only one person that's allowed to salute with their left hand. I learned that the hard way.
I have 2 right hands. So, it's fine.
Oh, I didn't know you identify that way.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the most important things. Did you have more to say on that?
I always have more to say, but I'll let you go on.
Fantastic. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I think the most important thing you mentioned there is the flexibility, right? Having an understanding of kind of the scope, the true scope of what can happen in a general sense is going to be part of what the DM needs to do, I think, in my opinion, in their prep.
Okay.
Right? You don't have to know everything about everything, right? There is time to develop. There is time to change. You do, in my opinion, because I'm a prep and improv DM.
Yep.
I like to do some prep so that I have a great solid understanding of the area and the things that are going on around my PCs. Mm-hmm. And when I'm at the table, I allow myself the flexibility to roll with the punches because they're going to throw some. Right. And
it's because you're used to DMing me. That's why.
Well, the rope-a-dope has begun. No, I think we trained each other very well. Yeah. But in that idea, knowing the area very well, mm-hmm. my second concept that's easy, I think, a little bit harder, but easy to grasp is monsters.
Grasp the monsters.
Grasp them. Pass this grapple check.
Right in the heart.
Ooh. You kind of alluded to it previously, so I appreciate the segue. But
you're welcome.
Going from money to monsters is kind of the opposite side of the civilized world of your D&D campaign. Mm-hmm. So your adventurers have gone out. They have slain, in a sense, the bandits, the hobgoblins,
right. the wilds,
the beholder, the dragon, the aboleth, the lich, whatever it is. This has now fundamentally changed the nature of nature.
Of that ecosystem.
Right? It is changing dramatically. So what happens if, yes, you knocked off the guy on the top for 100 miles in any direction, mm-hmm. right? Oh, that's going to create huge shifts. Right. Just like if you kill all the wolves because the wolves are eating the livestock of the farmers, right? Now there should be this thing, speaking in real terms, where the deer population explodes because the wolves were keeping the deer population down.
And now the deer are eating all
and now the deer is eating all the feed for the farmers. And so the farmers are now hiring hunters again to go out and get these deer and elk or whatever it is. That's a very simple one. Mm-hmm. But what happens when we're talking about a group of wyverns that are controlling the area. Right. Now they're keeping the other predators away. So while we worried about wyverns for a while, PCs came and dealt with them.
Wyverns?
Wyverns.
Wyverns?
Every time.
No, I also say wyverns, but I think I heard Mercer say wyverns.
Well, Matt, you still owe us a call.
Yeah, call.
So let us know. That's two words that you can whisper over the phone to make us melt. So in this case, let us know. I'm going to continue with.
Sorry, I'm trying to derail.
Now I'm just going to think about this for the next 10 minutes. But what happens when you've destabilized the nature? We know and we've heard nature abhors a vacuum, right? Something is going to fill that space. Now, that might not be something that is part of the environment. The wyverns get killed. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Now we know that we are safe to move our caravans through this area. So now that natural hole is going to be filled by, every time, by bandits, maybe by orcs, maybe by, kobolds, hobgoblins, whatever. Maybe by merchant guards always going through there, disrupting even further the natural order things. Or maybe now they're going to put a road through there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Whatever it is, there can be, once again, far-reaching consequences for seemingly innocent things, seemingly innocent effects. Right? So when we're doing things, once again, get them while they're young. I think one of the questions that you should slide into their brain boxes is
their brain DMs.
If this is the campaign for it, which most campaigns are, but are we doing a good thing?
Right.
Yeah. Is what we're doing furthering the needs of somebody who is selfish and they're looking after their own means and they don't care what harm they cause? Or is this actually a good thing to do? Right. Is this a needed thing? Does this is this going to open up? Oh, yes, we're going to knock off the kingpin. Oh, well, the other kingpins were just waiting for that one to fall because they were waiting to move into the area anyway, and you just saved them an underground knife fight war.
Right.
Thanks, guys. Now we're even more powerful. Right. Getting them in there, getting them thinking about these things also starts to open up their comprehension of the world around them to know that their thoughts become reality in that world after they have done their actions. The consequences are real. And if they start thinking and coming up with some of the consequences, that's some of your prep DMs. Get them to talk about, as they're talking about, listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Listen to what's going on. Sometimes when they throw you a baited hook, you take that bait, right?
Well, it's so, I shouldn't say it's so rare, but it's a treasure that they've given you.
It is. Yeah. It is. And some of them are better than our own ideas, right?
Yeah.
Because they are crowdsourcing and we are generally alone in the dark.
Well, it comes directly from the consumer. This is what I want.
Yes.
It's
also a great touch point to see what you can do further in the campaign. But in this case, when they're going out there, is this a good thing to do?
Right.
Get them to teach them those lessons, right? And if they know that it's wrong, or if they know that they're helping, person A, but they're hurting person B, they should know that. They should know what's going on there, have those dialogues.
They should be aware of that so they can have that interesting choice to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you're doing what we think you're doing, if you're putting these lessons and thoughts into practice, then they're going to be doing what you're doing, right? So you're increasing the kind of comprehension of the game is going to increase their comprehension. And then you guys are going to help each other kind of work your way up that ladder to create a more immersive, better kind of system, campaign, whatever it is that you guys are running.
It's really pleasant, sort of positive feedback loop,
it
right?
It really is, right? The more I put in, the more you guys get. The more you put in, the more I get. Oh, well.
The more I get, the more I put in.
So now we're just going to do like what we were saying. We're going to give you positive feedback for the thing that you did, and then you're going to give that back. And it's just truly another layer to the communal activity.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And the bonding exercise that you, as all players, right? Some are PCs, some are DMs, but you're all players of D&D together. So monsters, are they actually evil? Are they actually evil?
I mean, who knows? Depends, right?
Yep.
I don't want to get into the morality of things. That's out of scope of today's talk, but are monsters evil? Like, what makes them evil? Who says they're evil? Right?
Who says, yeah. And that's the biggest one. Is who's saying that, right?
Yeah. The DM is.
Huh.
Right?
That's all my notes. Evil.
Everyone's evil. You're evil. You're evil. Everybody's evil. Also have cars.
Ooh.
I mean, no, it is great, that sort of positive feedback loop. And then over the years, you'll find, hopefully, that like the level of gameplay and RP and story and all that engagement super high compared to the beginning. All because you started up with just a little bit. Right? And every session just gets better and better and better and better. But as good as it is,
as good as it gets,
it can go wrong. And I do think that you have to be careful in how you go about adding in this the consequences of actions, the reactions of the world. When you're deciding what is going to happen, because if you're not careful, you can I don't know, you won't get the benefits that you're thinking you're going to get if you don't do it right. Like,
right.
Yeah, be careful because not to overreact.
Yes.
Don't overreact, Byron. And
what?
And don't underreact either. It's a fine balance. Because if the consequences, for example, are too severe for what the players actually did, for one thing, it breaks realism. It's not real anymore. It's not believable. And it creates frustration in the players. Right? Like, I don't know, say you went and bought you killed the goblins.
Oh, okay.
Right? All the goblin tribes, right? And then now, because the goblins
that enemy is done,
aren't there, there is a family of orcs that come and just start rampaging the town. Now all the townspeople hate you, and they're like, "No, we need to execute these these adventurers, because it's your fault that the orcs are here, and we're going to destroy it." Like that doesn't make sense. It's not believable. It's too much because it's the townsfolk who hired the adventurers anyways to get rid of the goblins, right? So, in that, as a player, it's like, what? This is too much. Like it's not appropriate. And I feel sort of infringed upon and it's not fair, and I'm frustrated. Right? Like maybe it may be more appropriate to be like, oh, you know what? You do bear some responsibility. We just want you to get rid of them, not kill them all.
Right.
So maybe let's work together.
Yeah.
Right? Because consequences are orcs.
Yes.
The too much part is execution. Right? So that's an example of overreacting.
The sign's head, kill them all. Extra bonus.
Right. Or I come back with a lot of money. Now everyone in town's a thief. Trying to steal my money. Even the guard whose kids I saved.
It's called the long con.
Right? It's too much. But on the other hand, for example, I save that guard's entire family. I come back, and if you underreact, again, it's not good. Hey, adventurers, welcome back to town.
Move along.
Right, but your kid's here. He's with me. You're not going to say hi at least to your kids or your wife? Like, they're not dead. Look, right? Like, I'm working. Right? And the next day he doesn't say anything. The kids and the wife, they don't ever say hi. They don't say thanks when you see them.
They go back to their Stepford lives.
Well, exactly. Would you like to buy some flowers, sir? I mean,
my sweet roll.
I mean, again, that impinges on the feeling of agency. I can do stuff, but nothing changes.
Doesn't actually matter.
And then I become, because of that, I'm disengaged.
The illusion of choice, right? Can't see the choice.
And I'm bored.
Right.
It doesn't matter what I do. Why do anything then?
Yep.
It's nihilism. It's me in junior high.
Oof. Speaking of philosophy.
Right? So yeah, be careful to balance how much you react. So it's not too much, not too little. A little bit too much, a little bit too little is fine. But if it's too far from what's appropriate, you're going to hurt, I think, the game in the long run.
I think that goes both ways.
Okay.
So if the PCs, from the DM's perspective, right? Because this is kind of from the PCs, look at the DM, the DM's overreacting, underreacting, right? If you as the DM are doing something and you see that the PCs are extremely underreacting or overreacting to this, right? Like, oh, the halfling bandit took 3 gold out of my coin purse in the tavern while we were playing that game, slaughter them all, right? You're just like, whoa. Okay, you guys are heading for a hard landing, because if you do that in the town, then the guards have to react in the way that guards would react. And then now we're just murder hobos versus the guards again, right? So I think at least on the DM's side of things, right, apply a parachute to the hard landing. Do give signs and warnings, right? Are you sure you touch it? Right? It's spiky and covered with viscous ooze and looks like glass is spread, broken glass everywhere. It's bound to cut you if you touch it. Are you sure you touch it?
That's a very good point. I think it's so important to make sure you foreshadow the consequences to their
or at least
actions.
imply heavy clearly imply.
I mean, I think for good and for for the negative consequences as well as the positive consequences.
Yeah.
You always laughing at me.
No, because you're a funny guy. No, I like the good consequences. Like, would you like an extra scoop? Yeah. Yeah. I would like. Could I have some cherries too? Yeah.
I mean, it's good to foreshadow for the good consequences, but it's especially important for the negative consequences, so the players can properly make that choice. Because if you don't, then it feels unfair.
It can.
I cast. Like I do every day, prestidigitation just to clean my clothes. I never knew, and no one ever even gave me any hints that any magic is outlawed and punishable by death.
Right.
In this country.
Right.
Like all of a sudden you DM, you're tossing this on me. Now the mage isn't waiting on death row. Like it feels so bad as a player, right?
Yes.
You don't need to, but really try your best.
You need to.
Like, let them know about these sorts of things.
It's clearly posted everywhere. All magic prohibited.
And if you forgot, that's fine. Give them that's the time to inform them. Have the barkeep be like, hey, no, none of that here.
Yeah.
That's not, I know you guys aren't around here. So just to let you know.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Right? The clerics will come down hard on you.
Right.
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 So, like I said, you don't punch your players or like hit them with those bad consequences without first letting them know.
Parachute before the hard landing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, right?
Cool.
Because you're just like, oh god, like that's not. If it's not fair, I'm now not having as much fun. And now as a player, like I'm scared to take those chances and go out there and try new things and be bold. Right.
Well, how often? I mean, to really punch it home. If a cashier gives you, like you pay, I know everybody's debit now, so it doesn't matter as much anymore these days, but you pay for something, the cashier gives you incorrect change.
Right.
If they shortchanged you, you're going to say something.
Right.
You don't want to feel like you got the short end of the stick. Hey, there should be an extra $5 bill here. Right. Yeah. You're going to say that. If they overpay you, some of us will say something, some of us won't.
Yeah.
Right. But either way, it becomes our choice because it's a good thing now. We don't feel cheated if they gave us an extra $5 bill and I get to give it back to them. Hey, you're going to be out at the end of the day.
Tip. Here's a tip. Good job.
Here's a tip. Oh, man. That's hilarious.
And then the manager's like, you stole money from the till.
You stole money from the, and you got a $5 in your pocket? What? Wow.
Consequences to your
Consequences.
You didn't give me the foreshadowing. I thought it was a good thing.
So, but we then allow, if it's a good thing, we then allow the characters to really speak to who they are, right? So some of the characters will go, oh, this is too much. Please take it back, right? Other characters go, and that's fine too, right? Well, I didn't tell them to give me money. I didn't steal from them. They gave me the money, right? And however they want to do that, but then that will show you who they are, or they will show you who you are if you let them, type thing, right? But yeah, good consequences, see what they do with it. It shows you who they are. Bad consequences, everybody might feel bad, right? In a way that isn't productive to the campaign. So parachute before the hard landing is kind of the thing, right? Let people know. And whether that's in-game or out of game. I know I recently stepped out of game to just remind my players, hey, the next part of this campaign is specifically going to be focusing on this type of thing in this type of play. Anybody has any questions, ask me about it. There are very real consequences to not paying attention to this part of what we're doing. Yeah. Right?
Birds, fresh eyes.
Birds. They love bird watchers. So these types of things are great to foreshadow because if the worst happens, then nobody can say, I didn't know.
Yep.
Right? I feel cheated because I didn't know. No, you did know, but you forgot. So still as a DM, I'm going to give you the parachute.
No, it was great. I remember that. Like you foreshadowed the birds. And then when it happened, kind of, and then it got resolved, everyone's like, whoo.
Right.
Because they knew.
Yes.
The consequences.
Yes.
Of not successfully passing that encounter. Right. So yeah, foreshadowing it's great for a lot of things.
Yes.
It's super important.
What manages expectations.
Yes.
Right. And that's one of the most important things, good or bad.
Yeah.
Right. Do work forward into your campaign, right? Understand that as you're designing these things, as you're increasing your awareness of the world, you're increasing your awareness of time and space and all of these things too, right? And so once again, these are further tools that once you start comprehending them, once you start understanding them, once you start mastering them, if you get to that point, then that becomes wicked tools that are in your toolbox. Master foreshadow. I'm the Phantom of the Opera, guys. What did you expect? Yeah. Westerns where the one guy's wearing a black hat. You're like, he's the bad guy. No, he seems perfectly black hat. Yeah. Anyway, so these types of things, very, very kind of important.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Rambo starts grabbing all his guns and all his weapons and bullets. What's going to happen next?
What's going to happen?
I don't know.
What's going to know?
You're just going to go on that date. Maybe.
Oh.
But yeah, so if you don't foreshadow, it feels unfair.
It can.
Right? And speaking of unfair, though, you need to make sure, I think, my last little point here for things to watch out for is that you need to make sure that you don't play favorites.
But the bard brought me snacks.
Right. Like you will like some players more than the players. That's natural.
No.
And that's okay.
No, guys, no.
Right? No. I love all my children equally.
Equally.
I don't have a favorite. Right? Like, and even if you do, like, say maybe you have a boyfriend who also plays, or a girlfriend, or your wife, or your husband.
Yeah.
Right? Or your common law partner.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or your mom, or your dad, or your brother. I don't know. Whatever. Someone that you like more than the other person, by the nature of your relationship. Right? You have to make sure you don't play favorites, because that will ruin things. It brews discontent.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Fast.
It's not, again, not consistent. It's not real. It's not believable.
Mm-hmm.
And it just brews up all those bad things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to make it bad for one person, make it similarly bad for another person.
Or for everyone.
Or for everyone. You know what I mean, though? Like equalize it out.
Yes.
So no one person feels like they're being targeted.
Well,
or one person's feeling that being put on a pedestal above all the rest.
Yeah, and this is yet another reason to jump back to episode 10 in our Harmon Wheel and tell better stories.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you can have people on different parts of the roller coaster at the same time. So some people are experiencing highs in this moment. Some people are experiencing lows because they're on different parts of their wheels, right? But everybody gets a chance to be in the fun zone.
Yeah.
Right? And that way, if somebody's going through misery or hardship, I'm putting in quotations, then it also allows for great immersive RP.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm feeling really good. Why are you blue? Why are you down?
Can I help? I've got extra energy and leeway now.
Right. I'm on cloud 9. Why don't you come up here? Right? Oh, I can't. Oh.
No.
Okay, suck. I'll see ya. Right? That can happen too. Sure.
I've got a town to buy. Huh.
But at least... what you have the chance, or you're creating the chance for greater interactions, better choices, more immersion, right? And that's really gonna kind of keep it going.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's time to get real.
Real, like really real.
Pretty real.
Or just kind of real.
No, really real. Your kind of concept there, once again, strongly pushes me to think that the third thing that I think DMs should really focus on for creating those ripple effects across the world are organizations.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right. The world, our real life world, is full of companies, right? There's a reason why there are chain companies, and there are mom and pop stores, and there are like multinational corporate conglomerates, right? And there's BlackRocks, and there's Vanguards, and all of these things, right?
Yeah.
There's all of these layers of things, and that's why our world is so complicated and is so interconnected, and really, it gets real confusing real fast. Yeah, this is why I left this one for the third and final one, is power and influence. Money, monsters, power. Okay. Right? They make the world go round. In this case, this is where you're really going to have to do a lot of work, at least initially, and there is a lot of upkeep. So this is why I saved it for last, right? It's far harder to create an organization than it is to roll dice to figure out how big a horde is, right?
By organization, you're talking about like merchants guilds,
thieves guilds, sure, any kind of guild
factions.
Things. Well, even this army, that town guard, this noblehood, that king, this knight organization, that wizard guild, the church, these churches, all of these. Why are there so many churches, right? And now I want all of them, and I want them all fleshed out, and I want them all able for a PC to interact and find depth and interest and cool things. And it's a ton of work. And on top of that, if you're doing it, in quotes, once again, I'm speaking a lot in quotes today. But if you want them all to be believable, then each one of those organizations has to have a bond, a deal, a flaw, goals.
They're like a character.
Right? They're like a character. Everything is another character in the story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so the environment isn't a monolith. It's not one thing. It is millions of small things. Right? And it can be as populated or as sparse as you want. right? Do you need to know that the PCs are taking the third turn after leaving the tavern that they left in the big city, and down that street there are 4 separate businesses owned by mom and pops, 2 weaponsmiths, this, that, this, that, and each of those have. God, no. That is way too much work. That's beyond a level that I think people should do. Maybe when we get into auto GPT and stuff like that, then maybe your world can do that. But it's so much to manage that it becomes too unwieldy and too much work. But simultaneously, there needs to be factions and engines that are driving things in your story, right? And simultaneously, there are public engines and there are private engines, right? So we're talking the Thieves Guild, the Assassins Guild, the Dark Brotherhood, whatever you kind of want to call it, the things that operate out of the public's eye and the things that operate in the public's eye, right? Because they should have the same kind of core fundamentals. They should have these core fundamentals because ultimately they are the same. The primary difference is, does the regular civility know about it or not, right? Do the PCs get this shoved in their face, or do they have to investigate and find this out?
Right. Illuminati confirmed.
Confirmed. So this is, for me, one of the things that I am currently working on to understand and make sure that my system is flushed out. One of my own personal goals is to write a campaign that's entirely set within a single large urban environment. It scares the shit out of me because having everything piled on top, butcher shop, having everything so close, you don't get time for things to process. You don't have travel time. You don't have this. You don't have that. There are organizations on top of organizations on top of organizations, and they're all doing things, and they all have their own little story wheels. They all have their own goals. And goal tracking is super huge if you have an organization. Right. What happens to the church if the church's goal is to build a new temple in this town? The PCs roll through, they drop a big fat tithe into the dish because they're like, oh, we did some bad stuff and we need divine forgiveness. Don't ask, don't tell, right? Here you go. The church on that wheel, maybe they needed, 5 positive movements to get forward. Well, that's 4 of them because now they have all the money that they need to build the new thing.
They would have had to make so many, maybe 4 deals with different kind of organizations. Now they don't need any of it.
Now they don't need any of it. They boom, 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 boom. Now all they got to worry about is, actually buying and transporting all the raw goods. Right.
Now they've hired someone to tempt the adventurers to do more evil things.
To tithe more, perhaps. I mean, corrupt. But this could happen. So when we're dealing with a small town with one or a no temple town, and the church wants to create that there.
Them no temple towns.
It's them no temple towns. This town ain't big enough for 2 temples. When we get into that, it's very simple. But when we, like I said, when we get into like a Waterdeep, a Baldur's Gate, a modern city, right, of any considerable size, it scares the shit out of me because of how much work conceptually I think it is. And I know there's got to be easier ways, but I need to dig. I need to force myself to expand my own boundaries. Just like you guys listening to this, you're hopefully finding things that are giving you new thoughts and new perspectives. I need to go out and find that myself in this area, right? And understand, how does this work? How much is too much? How much is too little? And find what is my jam? What is my flow in this area? And, do I then change the scope of the campaign to a neighborhood? Now I'm not dealing with the whole city.
Right.
Oh, okay. That's way easier for me to deal with.
It's funny. Maybe is it any different from having a bunch of NPCs with different goals and motivations?
I think
five NPCs and say 5 organizations. Simple organizations, say.
No, I think it is because they're more interconnected. Their physical proximity in the world creates more interactions.
Well, I don't know. The people, if NPCs can be closer to, like, it's a family of 5 now.
Right.
Right. Like, now, like, someone flirted with the wife and the husband saw. And then things happen. And maybe the same sort of process that you go through in sort of figuring out what happens to the family is sort of what you do from a higher level to those 5 organizations. Like, just sort of do a mini RP sessions. As in your RP is each organization?
Well, this is one of the things that I have discovered and I do implement currently is between actual game sessions, I have what I call like a world session. Right. Where I see how much time has passed in the previous session. Sometimes it's half a day in our entire session, and I don't have to do much work at all. Sometimes it's weeks and I have to do quite a bit more work because I am checking to see if my organizations are moving forward in their own individual goals. It's not just the PCs that are an active engagement in my world. Right. Now, what the PCs do can be positive for my organizations, can be negative for my organizations, right? They can go down in their tracker as easily as they can go up. Right? Based on what happens, based on what's going on. Oh, the PCs came to town and they want to build a temple to themselves. And now there are no raw materials available because the quarry's booked for the next 3 years.
They just made a bathhouse.
Right.
They bought up all the land.
So now the church, instead of going up 3 notches, that one notch where they had the land secured, nope. They got outbid. They got taken away. And now what does that do? What kind of consequence does that create? What kind of power shift? And this is why power is the most nebulous, I think, of the 3 that I'm presenting today.
Yeah.
Because power is so dynamic in of itself that there isn't a tried and true way to just say, oh, this is power and I have it. And you don't. Right. There's so many different ways. And we talk about this in our lateral building. Right. Right. And that's why I'm saying if you're creating multiple angles and dimensions to each of these things and you're flushing them all out to equal value and whatnot, it's a ton of work and maybe it's too much work. I don't know. You're going to have to find your own style, just like I'm going to have to find my own.
I think you can start simple.
Please.
Like I have a limited number of organizations, say 3, and they all have very simple goals and it's simple sort of means to achieve those goals. Right. And they affect each other in some ways, but that's it. Like nothing super like multiple people within the organization with different motivations and different ideas of where the organization should go. Like just treat them as sort of monoliths at first with simple goals and simple sort of methods.
Well, and that harkens back. That harkens back to my earlier comment and my advice that I think is proving to be true now. And that's really to just have a good understanding of what is around the PCs.
Right.
The PCs cannot get to know an organization top to bottom in one session. And if they can, then it's designed as a very shallow organization. That's a general store, a tavern, or whatever, right? It is something with no depth that's not designed to have depth. But maybe the thief was in there and he flashed some signs and the bartender flashed some signs back. Oh, now there's something there. Now in between sessions, I can take a moment and go, oh, maybe this is a connection. Maybe this is a hub. Maybe this is a safe house for the Thieves Guild or for the Thieves, whatever. Okay, cool. I can make more depth and allow them to experience the world a little bit at a time so it doesn't overwhelm them. So I don't force myself into a hard landing.
Well, that's the importance, again, of flexibility, right? Be like, nope, if the players are far away from this, it's a low resolution.
Correct.
It's just a shape. In general, that gives you an idea that that's a tree. If they get closer, then you can start rendering more details. Right.
Well, and I've said it before, and I will say it again, everything is everything and nothing. If the PCs don't go after it or don't engage with it, then it doesn't need to have as much resolution. It doesn't need to be as fleshed out unless it's important to the story and they're just going to have to come back around and experience it anyway.
Because they're going to.
But then you have to do that work anyway, so it's not extra stuff. But no, I myself set goals, right? What? I'm setting that this does conceptually, I don't think it's beyond the depth that I can do.
Right.
But I don't know how to tackle it necessarily. But I do want to design an all-urban campaign.
Right.
I don't want to see any green grass.
Well, I think the more you do it, and if you do it for a while, make mistakes and get better, better, it'll become sort of more second nature. I'm excited.
Awesome.
If I get to play in that campaign.
You can't play.
I'm not allowed to play D&D.
Never.
I am. We'll see for the foreseeable future.
Dun, dun, dun. Big twist. But yeah, Yeah, I think those are a lot of different concepts and fundamental core ideas. I think is more than enough for you to work on in an hour.
Yes.
Right? If you fully understand interactions of money, creatures, power, consequences, benefits, teaching methods.
Give me a break. Economics is an entire department at university. So is politics.
No, I'm not letting you get a short rest. No breaks. No breaks allowed.
Right. So, I mean, you don't need to go into that much detail, but but even you get a basic understanding of it. It's a lot to wrap your mind around. But I think even just a basic understanding of how these things work will add so much.
Well, and if any of you out there are economics majors, let us know if you're watching this, you probably play.
Yeah.
Have you developed any kind of simplified game mechanics that work to create more dynamic change in the world? What happens when somebody comes in with a bunch of money? If you know the principles of supply and demand and how that would work in a,
crazy, like, oh yeah,
in a Western
you guys
society.
did what? Oh yeah, that's going to trigger a recession.
Yeah.
House prices are going to drop.
I can tell you right now, BBG,
unemployment's going to drop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and so maybe if you've got it, let us know, right? Because I want to improve too.
Yeah.
I want to get better.
I know, right? I want you to get better.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Because I don't want to get better. If you get better, then I can just mooch off you.
Nice.
Unless you die. Right.
Foreshadowing.
Right.
But anyway, yes.
I have to do everything myself.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Alas, a good thing comes to an end. But let us know. Jump in the comments what you think, what you are working on as a DM or a player when you're trying to conceive more of the world around you. If you're Matt Mercer and you need our digits, just DM. There's 10, 11 little buttons away.
Yeah.
From your best friend ever.
Right?
Ever.
Jeez. All right. Wonderful. If you guys loved it, right? Like it, love it, subscribe, follow, rate us on the podcast, check out the Patreon and all that kind of stuff. But even if you don't, we love you. Thanks for watching. This has been Caffeine and Cantrips. I'm Sean.
And I was Byron.
Thanks for joining us. Enjoy us next time. Or else.
Yeah. I'm enjoy the shit out of you, boy. Next time.